Alright, so we've done the best weapons in Chapter 4, so you guys know the drill by this point. It's time for the worst weapons in Chapter 4. While Chapter 4 was absolutely loaded with incredible weapons, if you haven't seen me go over the best, go check that video out first. And I do want to preface before we get right into this video that it is going to be a lot of items on this list. There aren't that many bad weapons. I think it's like 4 or 5, but the rest will be items. And I just got one thing to say, Chapter 4 Season 3 lovers, you may want to turn the video off now. Big shout out to all the people listed on screen. These are all my channel members. If you would like to join the channel, get shout outs like these, other perks, be sure to click the link in my description and join the team. If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like, use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop. You guys know the drill by now, and yeah, let's get right into this. So I'm going to start off with one that I think is obvious, but I don't see talked enough about being a bad weapon of Chapter 4. That's the Scar. So yeah, they made a big decision with the introduction of Chapter 4 to make the Scar like the base regular AR. Of course, before this, the Scar used to be your gold and purple weapon of choice. It was like the best assault rifle, right? But with Chapter 4, they made it in common through blue rarities, along with your purple and legendary rarities. And in my opinion, this really hurt the Scar. The Scar absolutely lost all of its aura with this decision. I don't know, right? Like, to me, the Scar was always just the dominant high-tier AR. If you wanted a good mid to long-range weapon, it was always the Scar, no question about it. Like, that was absolutely this weapon's full identity. But of course, they had to dim it down a little bit if they were going to make it so it's like a common green and blue weapon, right? And that's what they did. And of course, the damage took a hit, but the big thing is the accuracy. If you guys have ever seen somebody full auto this version of the Scar for more than like 10 bullets, you're never going to hit a shot. It is brutal. Like, I would actually go as far as to say this is probably in my bottom 10 assault rifles I've ever used. In the purple and legendary version, we might have a conversation for it to be actually kind of decent. But most people this season, including myself, just went with the twin mag or the TAC AR or even the red eye assault rifle. That was an extremely popular choice. I don't think people understand really how bad this version of the Scar was. And of course, as we did with part 1 in this video, we are starting at Chapter 4 Season 1, and there will be no Fortnite OG on this list. I should have mentioned that in the beginning of the video. But regardless, our next weapon from Chapter 4 Season 1 is the Excalibur rifle. And yes, I know some people are going to be really upset with this choice, because the Excalibur rifle is truly a one-of-a-kind weapon. It's actually considered a marksman rifle, but it shoots explosive shotgun shells in the form of like a sword. In terms of creativity, this thing gets a 10 out of 10. It doesn't get much more unique than this. But I'll be honest with you guys, that's about where my positive comments for this weapon end. For how difficult it is to actually land a shot with this weapon, you don't really get rewarded in terms of damage. I mean, the legendary version does only 65 damage. But I think what really kills this weapon is actually the structure damage, right? You're using an explosive weapon, you expect to be able to kind of burn through those wood builds, right? But that's actually not the case. As we know, wood walls have an HP of 150, and this weapon in the legendary version does structure damage of 66, meaning you have to shoot 3 shots to blow up one single wood wall. So in terms of like an explosive weapon, this thing is essentially useless. So you're basically banking on using it like a marksman rifle, but you're not going to use this thing at long range. Maybe if you could mod it and put a scope on it, it would be a little bit of a different story. You have to bank on like being able to basically control this thing. You basically had to like lead your shot right, because it was shooting a projectile, right? It was shooting a sword. You had to incorporate bullet drop right into your shot, all while having no scope and no real easy way to do so. Besides it being cool, the only thing that this weapon has really going for it is the fact that it uses shotgun shells as its ammo, so you're really never gonna run out of ammo. But I don't know about you guys, I used this weapon for like the first week. I thought it was so sick. I believe it did get nerfed a little bit, and yes, I'm actually looking at the patch notes right now. It did, but yeah, in the beginning of the season, I was just picking this thing up because it was cool, and then after a week, I wasn't touching it ever again. All right, and we actually have one more weapon for Chapter 4 Season 1, and I can't even call it a weapon. It's more like a utility item. It's the Guardian Shield. And if you didn't know this thing existed, yeah, I don't blame you. It was literally barely in the game, and nobody ever touched this thing. At least for me, I'm a builds player. Maybe in zero build it's a little different, but in builds, this thing was legitimately useless. And I understand what they were trying to do, right? Similar to the Excalibur rifle, kind of that like Guardian, Castle, medieval theme. It's just a brutal item all around. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because honestly, it doesn't deserve that much time in my video. Basically, you just hold it up like a shield. It has very minimal energy, or you could throw it on the ground to be like almost like a deployable barrier. Yeah, just not for me, and not for probably many of you guys watching this this video. I thought this was a lock to be here. Alrighty, we have made it to Chapter 4, Season 2, one of the absolute strongest weapon metas we've ever seen in Fortnite history. There are so many good weapons in this season, and it was hard to pick one that was bad. But, and I know this is going to be a hot take, I think the Havoc Suppress AR is a bad weapon. A DPS of 169 in the Legendary version is absolutely brutal. You guys remember how I was absolutely dogging on the Scar just a couple minutes ago? The DPS of that weapon in the common version is 165. And look, obviously there's different factors, right? You can't just look at DPS, but DPS is a pretty telling factor on how good a weapon is. I understand that the Havoc is ultra accurate, right? Whereas the Scar is not, but a DPS of only 4 lower in a common version versus the Legendary of the Havoc Suppressed really says something to me. Dude, like, it just feels like I'm shooting marshmallows when I use this thing. For me, I would 100% absolutely rather use the Red Eye Assault Rifle, and I did during Chapter 4 Season 2, as well as the Heavy Sniper. I just couldn't get around to using this weapon, and the fact that it's suppressed to me is not that big of a deal. Like, even when you hear somebody shooting a suppressed weapon, you still know the general direction of where the bullets are coming from. And in a season where there was literally like double-digit weapons that were absolutely stacked to the max with just being unbelievably overpowered, to me, there was no reason to ever take this. All right, let's move on to Chapter 4 Season 3, and honestly, I assume that this is where the brunt of this video is going to be, so if you are a Chapter 4 Season 3 lover, you might want to click off now. I really do believe that Chapter 4 Season 3 is one of the worst seasons of all time, and I think partially that is because of a weak loot pool. So let's just get right into it, right? The first item I want to put here is the kinetic boomerang, and I'll be real with you guys, like, this thing was barely in the game. It was added, of course, with the launch of Chapter 4 Season 3, and then was temporarily vaulted in v25.11 because of issues after rebooting, and they didn't unvault it until update 25.20. That is a pretty long time for an item to be vaulted, right? And look, I get what they were trying to do with this thing. If you guys have been playing Chapter 5 Season 4 like I have, I think what they were going for with the kinetic blade is currently what like Captain America's shield is, right? That item that could like chain between multiple players, and you would throw it and it could return to you. You could throw it and then jump in front of somebody's box, and you could get it through the back of their box and hit them. Like, all these cool ways to use it. But yeah, it didn't function like that. I'm glad they kind of realized their mistakes and fixed it with Captain America's shield in Chapter 5 Season 4, but they might have gone a little too far. But yeah, for me, I have no problem if this never comes back. I don't really care to ever see it again. And next, we have another item that's going to be the wild wasp jars. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool idea on paper, but executed terribly. But I understand that this wasn't an item that was like supposed to be really good. It was basically meant to be kind of like a secondary weapon, but I guess, can I even say that? Because they made multiple augments around this thing. It's just terrible. It's a really irrelevant weapon in the grand scheme of things. Nobody ever used it. Firefly jars are 10 times better. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about wild wasp jars. I don't think anybody even remembers these. But let's talk about an actual weapon. That's gonna be the thermal DMR. And yeah, this is a really, really interesting weapon. I get what they were trying to do here, right? You have the heavy, dense jungle biome, so of course you're gonna want a thermal weapon to be able to see through and pick people off. While I didn't like the thermal DMR and I didn't think it was a good weapon, I really think that this was a step in the right direction for DMRs, right? You had a really good fire rate. I hate how a lot of the DMRs are kind of slow and clunky. It had a really good fire rate and at the same time very low recoil, so it was really easy to use. I also absolutely love how they made it so you could toggle the thermal sight on or off. Again, I felt like they took a lot of steps in the right direction with this weapon. I just don't think that thermal weapons like this, especially a thermal DMR, are ever going to be like in the meta for a Fortnite season. That's just kind of how it works, right? Like, DMRs are never like the go-to weapon in a season. They're kind of like before a sniper, but like after an assault rifle. I don't know. Again, just like a really forgettable weapon, but I understand if you do like this weapon. I really see the vision that they had here, and I think with a couple tweaks, this could be a pretty good weapon. But we have reached the end of the laundry list for Chapter 4 Season 3 with the cloak gauntlets. All right, I mean, it's kind of getting ridiculous, right? How many more times do we have to see the invisibility before we realize that it's absolutely trash in the game? Predator's cloaking gauntlets, these cloak gauntlets, we have the ones in Chapter 5 Season 4 now with the Mysterio medallion. I mean, they all are just awful. And yeah, I mean, I literally don't know a single person that was ever voluntarily taking these, and the fact that they had a mythic version is just garbage. It's disgusting. I understand, right, with a big, thick, dense jungle biome, you are thinking that, okay, you could just kind of hide around a tree and you wouldn't be seen. You had to come like completely still to activate and deactivate these things. They made a loud noise when you did both actions. Just never touch invisibility items in Fortnite. They always suck, except for like shadow bombs. That's like all I can give it. And all right, our final season, of course, we are excluding season OG, and that is going to be the scoped burst SMG from chapter 4, season 4, of course. And I do know that there are like always a little group in my comment section of people that love the scoped burst SMG. But let's be honest, it really wasn't an SMG. Most people used it like an assault rifle. I mean, was anybody really asking for a scoped burst SMG at that? I mean, I could see a regular scoped SMG, but a scoped burst? I don't really know. Up until the Thunder Burst SMG, burst subs got a really bad rap in the game. And for a good reason. They were all pretty trash, and I think this one is too. I will say though, of course, it was incredibly accurate. It had great handling. So I would say if you stuck to those kind of mid-ranges, you could do some good work with this thing, but inside a box when you're supposed to use an SMG, yeah, you are not going to touch this thing. Again, like I said, I don't think a scoped burst SMG was ever necessary. Maybe in the mythic version you could get by using it, but other than that, I think this is a pass for me. Especially in a season where you had literally one of the best scoped weapons of all time, that being the twin mag assault rifle. Why would you ever touch this weapon? Well, all right, guys, that is my ranking for some of the worst weapons in all of chapter 4. There were a couple of items, I'm looking at you, Machine SMG, that could have been on this list. If you guys have enjoyed this series so far, be sure to leave this video a like and let me know you guys are enjoying it. Go check out the chapter 5 best and worst weapons, and of course chapter 3, 2, and 1 will be coming soon. Again, if you like this video, be sure to leave it a like, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.